Hi, I'm Peggy Farren, and we are live with the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel and nature photography. Welcome to episode 39. This is live. We're recording live on Facebook. If you're not watching us live, it's facebook.com/understandphotography. So if you want to watch us live and ask questions in the comments, things like that, please do. Otherwise, watch the recording on YouTube. It's a higher quality recording on YouTube. Or listen to us as a podcast on iTunes. You can listen in the car or while you're doing your housework or whatever. We have a brand new Lightroom class, and it's new because it's online. It's not a new class. Joe Fitzpatrick has been teaching this Lightroom class at Understand Photography Studio here in Naples, Florida for about 6 or 7 years. And so he's tweaked it and improved it over the years. Well, now it's online, and we have an extreme introductory special. In fact, I regret putting this in my newsletter because it's selling so well. I'm like, I'm selling this too cheap. It's $29 for the entire course. It's called Getting Started with Lightroom, and it is a series of, I think 29 or 30 short videos. They're short videos, so Joe teaches you a little tiny bit, you do it. You watch the next video, you rewind. But it's nice because you can go back and say, hey, I don't remember how to do something in the, like, export in the library module. Well, you've got a nice little short video to go back to. So you own the class for life once you buy it. Now, because I already announced it in the newsletter, if you're not on our newsletter, by the way, go to understandphotography.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom and just subscribe. You can subscribe to the newsletter, or you can ask for one of the, we have a free report called Travel Photography Essentials. Sign up for that. You'll be on our newsletter, so you'll be the first to know these kind of specials. So that special is going to go through June 30th, which I regret, but it's too late now, so you may as well grab it because it's probably going to be over $100 when we correctly price it. But we're looking for feedback. So you have a job that if you take it for $29, you have to let us know what's going on. The other thing is the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography is a very comprehensive, you're going to get a great foundation in photography. You're going to learn how to shoot in manual with your camera. So whoever signs up for our class, I say, hey, what kind of camera do you have? So I can tell you what button to push and what dial to turn and that kind of thing. You're going to learn to shoot in manual. You're going to learn about composition and how to win in competitions. You're going to learn a lot about lighting and flash, and then all the techie stuff like metering modes and drive modes and things like that. So that starts June 8th. That's a live class. It's also recorded, so you can go back and watch it, but it's live, so you have homework and feedback on your pictures, and you're going to really love that class, starting very, very soon. Now, that one is on sale for $297, a little more expensive, but you're going to get that great photography education. Okay, so today, my guest is Sonny Saunders. Sonny took up photography as a hobby many, many years ago, and he's been a very serious photographer and photography instructor for probably almost as many years as he's been taking pictures. Sonny is the co-founder of Dippy Cig Camera Club in Naples, Florida. Dippy Cig is a large and very vibrant club. So today we're going to talk about how the group was formed, how it's thrived, and how it got its funny name. So welcome, Sonny.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
Not
coming.
a funny name, though.
It's a funny name.
Not a funny name.
Come on.
No, not really. Well, Bill Coakley and I co-founded it together, and we had been on the Naples Freenet we've been on it for 20 years now, on the board.
And the Naples Freenet is?
They offer free internet service.
Okay.
It's dial-up, okay?
Still,
and
it's still
one time,
dial-up?
20 years ago, it was extreme. We had 7,000 members.
I
okay?
was a member.
Yep. And today they're down to less than 1,000, but there's still 1,000 people who use dial-up.
Wow, in
Yeah,
Naples.
In Naples. Well, if you're just going to do email or something, it works fine, you know.
Yeah.
So we decided we want to start a camera club, and if you go to start any kind of a club, if you go to get a checking account, you have to have an entity. You have no insurance. So it's a huge step to start a club when you don't know how well it's going to work or not. So we got the idea, why don't we approach the Freenet board and say, why don't you make it part of your organization? We'll be under your insurance and whatnot, but will be no financial burden to you whatsoever. And so that's how it started. And so the name stands for Digital Photography and Imaging Special Interest Group. And the
So digital photography imaging?
well, actually, the real name is Naples Freenet Digital Photography and Imaging Special Interest Group.
So
But
DPISIG,
right.
Digital Photography Imaging
Special Interest Group.
Special Interest Group.
Right. And after maybe 4 or 5 years, we dropped the NFN in the front of the name because everybody kept saying, what's NFN? We ended up having, say, 100 members. 99 of them, or 98 of them, didn't have any idea what the Freenet was. It wasn't part of the Freenet. In the beginning, we had a few Freenet members who came to meetings, and you know, maybe some of them are still there. We still have some original members, but 99% of the Freenet had nothing to do with photography. And so we dropped the name NFN, and we just went by Dippy Cig. And we recently incorporated, and now we're an entity of our own. We're a 501(c). We divorced ourselves from the Freenet because now we have over 400 members, and we're big enough that we were bigger than they were. And,
now you
and
really
it came
are.
to the point that it just, and it was a mutual, they were pleased to have us do it, because now we're going to pay them for the support we were getting for free. They have our website, we have our mailing list through them and everything else.
Oh, through the Naples Freenet.
Through Naples Freenet. They really are a big sponsor of not-for-profits. That's one of their biggest things now, is their furnishing services for not-for-profits. And so we kind of fit right in. And so when I approached the board, I said, of course, we'd want to pay for the services that we're getting. And so it worked out really well, and everybody's happy. And so now, since February, we're Inc. We're actually
just
incorporated.
Since this February?
Since this February, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's a great
big
story.
move. It was a big move.
Now, let's go back, because you fashioned this club after a club in Sarasota, right?
Damage.
And so how did you find out about Damage? Did you belong to the club? Because we already had a camera club here in Naples, the Naples Camera Club, correct?
Yeah, they met on Tuesday nights, and I've been teaching. First, I taught mail order business.
I took that
because
class.
I was in that business. Yeah, you took that. A lot of the people I know today took that, and so I taught that for a number of years, because at that time there was no internet, and mail order was really mail order. And of course, once the internet came along, everybody wanted to get involved, and so I taught that for a long time. And one of the persons who took my class, and besides you, was Steve Hall. And Steve Hall says to me, do you belong to, I haven't mentioned I was interested in photography, but never had any time for it. And he said, well, gee, there's a great club up in Sarasota. He says, I'll let you know when it is, and if you want to, you can ride along with us. So we went over and we met over on Immokalee Road, and I met Jeff Bilyeu, who went up there all the time. And so that's when I met Jeff, who's still a member of our club, came to our first meeting and still a member, and is quite an active volunteer. And so we went up there, and I was really impressed. They had about 300 members, very active club. It was funny, I say they were an active club. They would have an outing, and they would publicize it for a couple of meetings. They'd have an outing. Bill and I would drive up there, and there'd be 10 people for the outing, and 2 of them were from Naples.
Wow.
When it came to their members doing something other than coming to a meeting, they had very poor participation. First outing we offered, we only had like 80 members, maybe, or maybe less than that, 40, and half of them showed up for the outing, and it kind of blew our mind away. And so we've always had a real group that participates, and Damage didn't. But Mike Minolti.
But they came to the meetings, because
they came to the meetings.
And you don't even remember, because I think I started going with Jeff at the tail end when you quit going.
Okay.
Because I went up with Jeff a lot. I went with Jeff almost every month, but it was usually just the 2 of us. Sometimes there were other guys, and maybe you were one of them at the time, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But mostly it was just Jeff and me going up to Damage. And those meetings, they had 300 people at the meetings. It was amazing.
And Mike Minolti, when we mentioned to him that we'd like to start one, Mike came down.
McNulton, I think.
Yeah, Minolti?
McNulton.
McNulty, all right. It was very helpful and very encouraging.
He's such a great guy. He's the guy who started Damage.
Oh, he actually started it. I didn't know that.
Oh, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But he was running it.
He was running it when I started. Yeah, it had been around.
He's the guy who made it so big.
And, of course, he left, and now it no longer
gone.
exists. That blows my mind away, that a club that can draw 300 people, and
it just sort of kept fizzling out.
And I didn't know he'd
then
gone
they
away
had-
until,
Then somebody started Lakewood Ranch in that area, and that one is the
Yeah.
big one now. They're the ones who get the 200 or 300 people at the meetings.
Right.
So that's what I want to talk to you about, because what happened to Dimage, and why did Lakewood Ranch, and so what happened to Dippy Cig? Why is Dippy Cig such a vibrant club? So let's go through some of the steps. So now how did you start it? Okay, you and Bill got in a room, you said, we're going to
Yeah.
start a camera club.
and Bill and I were almost completely opposites. I had been in the mail order business, so I'm thinking, well, gee, we can put out a newsletter and we can have direct mailing. And his one rule was, if I'm going to be involved, it will be all digital. We will do nothing but digital. So we started out that way, and we recently had something come up and we were going to do something, and I said, no, wait a minute. We're not going to do that because we're all digital. So we do everything digital.
Okay.
And kind of started from there. First meeting, I think we had 22 members, met in a restaurant that I was a co-owner of the real estate, not the restaurant part, but the real estate. And it was vacant, so we used that. And the air conditioner didn't work. So we got 20 people sitting there in July 1st, which is when we met. And hot, and yet they came.
Now, where did you find the 20 people?
Word of mouth. I told Jeff. Jeff, when he found we may have a club in Naples, I mean, he was in Steve Hall, and so they knew some other people, and they knew a lot more people than I did, because I still had a business. I was running a business.
You were
I
still
really
working.
didn't.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where they came from. We had 22 people.
That's a lot
show
of
up the
people
first
for a
night.
first meeting.
It really was. The second night, in fact, one of the members said, we can't meet here, obviously. So he says, why don't you come over to, it's off County Barn Road, the big, right where County Barn and Davis come together, that subdivision there. And he says, you can use their clubhouse. And he says, it holds 80 people. So the second meeting we had 60 people show up.
60?
Word of mouth, 60, 60.
And it was 1 month later.
1 month later.
Wow.
And so we knew that wasn't going to work. So I talked to my wife's sister, who was in the school system, and she says, you can go out to Edison, which it was then.
The college.
The college. And she says they have a room you can use and so on, because the school system rented that and had conferences there. So she gave me a name, and I went out and we met the fella, and he said, I'd like to sponsor you. So we didn't have to pay any rent for the first year. That was wonderful.
Oh my God.
And so it kind of grew from there, and now we're at Edison, now Florida Southwestern. We have our lectures there and everything else. They've been very supportive. Been a good combination for both of us.
Now, do you think that part of the success is because it was digital? Because there was already a Naples Camera Club. Because that's why I used to drive up to Sarasota. I was trying to learn. I was a professional photographer, but everybody was poo-pooing, oh, digital's not going to last, all this other stuff. Well, I knew it was going to happen, so I was trying to learn digital photography, and back then you couldn't just go on the internet and look stuff up. So I was driving to classes in Miami, driving to classes in, well, actually in Sarasota. That's how I found out about Dimage the first time, because I took classes from John Navas, no, I forgot his name.
JPI?
No, he's in Bradenton. This was in Sarasota.
Oh.
What was it called?
Oh, yes, he was in that building with the...
He had like Monty Zucker there.
Yeah.
Big name.
Big name, John...
John Novichowski or something. It's
right. He had good classes. And
he had very good
classes. He
classes.
was an Adobe certified instructor in the end.
That's how I first started going to Sarasota,
Right.
because wow,
Okay.
I'm like, Sarasota, that's only 2 hours away, and
Yeah.
it's not going to Miami, which is scary to drive and all that other stuff. So I think he's the one who told me about Dimage, and they're like, oh, a whole bunch of people come from Naples. And I don't think I think I just
Yeah.
sort of invited myself. I don't even know, because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the crowd, like Steve and
Yeah.
Jeff. And
Well, one of my students that had taken the business class, and she said she was kind of into photography. Somewhere along the line, I happened to always mention photography, and she had gone several times to the Naples Camera Club, and because it was on Tuesday nights and I couldn't go, but I had rescheduled so that I was going to teach on a different night just so I could go to it. And she says to me, "You're probably going to be sorry you changed your night." She said, "It's a really small group. They're very centered on one subject, and they really don't welcome new people that well." She went a couple of times. It was, I can't remember her name right now. Anyway, she was one of our first members too. So I have never been there.
Still to this day?
But they're still there. They're still active. I think they
They're
all
a very
belong to
friendly
Dippy
group
Cig.
now, because they're all the
Yeah.
same people who belong to
But
Dippy.
they
But it
really
is
are
a
centered
smaller
on the
club.
competition.
They're very into
Everything does with competition.
Yeah, they are very into
And
competition.
if you're not into competition that much, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the real secret of Dippy Cig. You ask why it's successful. I started out with the idea that if you want the club to do something and you're willing to do it, we'll make the provision so that you can do it. And all the special things that we have going on are people who came and said, why don't we have this, or why don't we have that? And I said, are you willing to lead it? And if they said yes, well, I said, great, we'll get a date, we'll get a time, we'll find a location for you, and you take it over. And even now, I tell everybody who comes up and says, why don't we do this? I say, wonderful, we'll do it, but you have to lead it. And that's how everything we're doing actually got started. We have 3 or 4 in the works right now where people have come and said they'd like to do something, like cell phone photography. Hasn't got, no one's, they said they want to do it and they put together a group, hasn't happened yet. Drone photography, 2 or 3 people come to it. And I've said, well, geez, you know, get together and we'll find a place for you to meet. We'll even buy a drone if that's what it takes, you know. I'll do anything that'll give the members what they want out of a club. And I think
Now
that's
you're
the secret.
talking about users groups here, right? That's what all these little subgroups are?
right.
They're special
But
interest groups, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, the meeting, you know, we'll get, we'll get 140, 180 people in a meeting in the winter, and we'll get 80 or 90. But out of 400 members, that's a small number. So, and it's funny because the people who come to the Lightroom group, which happens to meet here, thank you for the use of your studio.
You're welcome.
Aren't the ones who go to the Photoshop, aren't the ones that go to the Elements, aren't the ones that go to the Creative. The Creative was last night. And I went there and the room was full. And someone says to me, well, we have a really small group tonight. And I said, really? And they said, oh yeah, we normally would have 2 or 3 times this many people. And there had to be 30 people there. So and yet those aren't the same people that go to the other things.
So how many special interest groups do you have? So you've got the creative group, and that's a very general group, but it's a more hands-on group, right?
They have projects, and they do something, and they bring it in the next month, and they show what they did, and they have speakers, and they're almost like a club in their own.
Yeah.
And they really are an offshoot of the other camera club that we had here in town, which was a Ritz Camera Club.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Frank Berna had that.
Yeah. Well, Nora, I think Nora was running it,
well,
and Nora's very
exactly.
active in this
and
creative
Nora's
group.
still very active in this
She's
group.
amazing.
She is. She's a real spark plug behind that.
Okay, so you've got the creative group, you've got a Lightroom users group, a Photoshop users group, a Photoshop Elements users group.
We had one that's Pro Show Gold. That's on hiatus right now because Jeff, who does that, is going to have to go out to California a couple of times. But we have that. And one of them that we have is kind of unusual, is a round table. We have a round table once a month. And that basically is where you just sit around and somebody comes in and you want to talk about printers. Somebody else comes in and brings some pictures and he says, I'd like to have you critique these. Somebody else comes in and says, you know, I saw this trick on Lightroom last night, and for 2 hours it goes on. And we get some really technical people there, and it blows your mind away. It does mine because I'm a techie. I really am. My interest in photography is the technical end. And we go so deep in the woods sometimes. It's unbelievable. And the talent we have, the people that are sitting there know all this stuff. Get down to the nitty gritty. I mean, talking about the difference in this pixel and that, and I mean, just blows my mind away. And the people that are there all understand this and thrive on it. And then we have other people who are just beginners. We had somebody come to the last one, hadn't even bought a camera yet.
Whoa.
So they want to know what kind of a camera should we buy. So you can imagine.
Oh, I'm sure there were a lot of opinions on that. Oh my, especially if you're with a bunch of techie guys.
Too. And then of course we have outings. We have an outing once a month, sometimes twice a month.
And that's like a field trip, right?
That's a field trip.
What's the next one, do you know? Or what's the last one? Do you remember?
The last one was Marco Island, the burrowing owls.
Oh, I love the burrowing owls.
That was a lot of fun.
They're so cute.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the next one is.
Do they have babies right now? Or
oh, yes, they do. And the member who ran it provided us with a map, and he lives on Marco, and he knew where they were.
Is
and he
that
knew
Jim?
us where to be. Yeah, Jim Robillard.
He was a guest here.
Yeah, and so it worked out really great. People who even had gone there and done owls before were amazed at this list and everything because, you know, it was like
He's
we
such
knew where
a
to go
great
eat.
guy.
Yeah.
That guy.
Some of
He's
the
so
nests, we had 6
organized.
babies.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I mean, he knew where for us to go,
Aw, that's
so,
awesome.
but we go all over. We go to Miami Zoo. We've been to Everglades National Park. So it's not just all local.
Okay.
So and there's another thing. We've had probably, I'm going to say 10 different directors as outing directors. The life of the club. Different ones come and they go, and that's been probably the biggest change we've had is been in outings. But
Because somebody has to come up with something every month. They have to call
yeah,
the
we have a
place
committee.
to make sure
There's
that
a committee, but you have to have somebody leading it.
Yeah, of course.
And then they meet and they decide. Used to be we had them once a month. Now we're having some 2 a month, and now like I say, some of them are out of the county. Where one time we kept everything really local, so it keeps evolving. It's what they want to do. Whenever whatever they want to do, that's what the club's there. The club's there to support whatever they want to do.
Now you also have gallery shows.
Right now we have a gallery show. Speaking of gallery shows, we're at the Naples Depot, which is a fantastic museum. If you've not been to the Naples Depot, that's the old train depot. It's a marvelous Naples museum now. They have the original sign from the motel that used to be right there.
The Trails End.
The Trails End. It is
got
a
an old
wonderful
50s car in
yeah,
there.
it is a marvelous museum. They don't get a lot of traffic, so we have about 45 pieces in there now. Yesterday we
And by we you mean
the club,
the members.
the members.
So
right.
how do you? Let's just talk about a gallery show. So did somebody approach?
We have a committee.
Okay.
We have a director of the committee, and they decide where we're going to do shows.
And what do? Do they approch Naples Depot?
People
and
approach
say,
us really now.
So you're big
We're at the point.
shots.
Yeah, we're at the point now. 4 or 5 years ago, we did the Central Avenue Library, and we have a show there right now. It started yesterday. We hung up, I think, about 60 pieces, and we went there, and we put about 80 pieces in there, which was way too many, and we didn't look professional, but it was really popular. In fact, it was been the most popular one we ever had. It was a lot of variety. We had birds and travel. You had everything you imagine out of the members. Each member put in 2, so we probably had 40, 50 members participate. And so it's been very popular. So this year, they asked us would we do it 3 months in a month. So we're there 3 different months during the year, which is probably too many. We shouldn't do it. So right now we're at the library, which really encourage you to go and see the show. And we're at the depot. And then Saturday we go down and we're at Marco Island Museum.
Wow.
We're having a show there. So at one time we said we're going to do 4 shows a year because it's a lot of work to organize it, and people have to register and so. And because people like the library said, well, gee, we'd like to do it 3 times. We can't do theirs 3 if we're only going to have 4. And there are other places we've been that heard about us, and they, and the members like it because they sell stuff.
Okay,
They're
so
very
let's
successful in selling.
Let's go slower on this
Okay.
topic. Okay, so you have a little committee. The committee members either get approached or approach places
Right.
and say, hey, we want to do a gallery show.
Right.
And then you put the word out to the members
Right.
and say, hey, anybody want to participate in this gallery show, what kind of rules do they have to have? Like, do they have sizes?
Yeah,
or?
we have a standard set of rules. Once in a while, we'll vary it because, maybe it's a big one, and so we'll let bigger sizes in. But normally we have a certain, we have a minimum size and a maximum size. And occasionally we'll let bigger pieces in.
And does it matter what kind of
No.
framing or?
No.
So
No.
they could be gallery
Anything.
wraps, they could be frames, they
Metal.
could be canvas, they could be metal, they could be.
Metal's very popular right now.
I know.
Yeah, very popular.
I did a show with the Cuba pictures, and I was like, I'll do something different, metal. Oh boy, that wasn't
Yeah.
different at all.
No. and lucite, or I think it's lucite or acrylic, yeah, that's very popular now. And
Okay, so then some places let you sell right then and there, and some don't, right?
we sell every place.
Oh,
Even in
everywhere
the
you
county,
go, you
even in
can
the
sell.
county. Now the county, we can't put prices on there, but we have a notice posted that says the librarian has a list. So the
Oh,
card
price.
says the name, the artist's name, the title, and something, and an email address or something, and then they go to the librarian, and she has a list. And if they say, like Trainwreck, how much is that? And they'll say, well, it's $90 or something. And we've been very successful selling. Almost every place we go, we sell things. And people keep saying photography don't sell.
But it's my goal to get those people to start selling more. I mean, most of this stuff, when I look at the prices are about the same as it costs them to print and frame it. They are so cheap.
No, I don't think so. You go look now.
Well, I was at the Naples Depot show, and I did look, and I was like, oh my God.
There was nothing
some
there.
Of them,
nothing
some
there
of them
under,
were priced were okay, like a couple of $200-300. But
well, there's
most
nothing there
of them
under 90. Well,
most of
now
them
wait
were
a minute.
pretty cheap.
I buy a frame for $18. Okay, I buy a frame at $18 at Walmart's.
Okay.
And I go to Costco and I have 11 by 14 printed for $4.25. I put that together and I offer it for $90.
Okay.
You go there and
you
look.
You don't mount your 11 by 14s? I got it. That'd be a good show. Because it's going to wrinkle.
Well, I put it in a
over
frame
time.
and it has a mat. Yeah, I put it in a frame.
Oh,
You
okay.
buy the
It's
frames at
matted,
Walmart.
though. It's matted though.
Yeah,
It's not
Walmart sells
mounted.
whatever the bigger size is, and it holds an 11 by 14 picture with about a 6-inch mat all the way around.
Okay. All right, the mat will keep
And it's
it
only
good.
$18 for the frame, and they're glass and they're nice wood.
That blows my mind. I've never seen a
And
frame
you go to
like
Costco
that.
and they print it for $4.25.
Yeah,
You know,
mine
now I've done some stuff
mine
in
don't
canvas.
cost my 11 by 14s don't cost anywhere near that cheap.
So that's why you see them at $90.
Okay. Because it seems so cheap.
I know, but when you and here again, now we have some people who have them professionally framed. In fact, I saw one they brought in and they sent it off and they had it framed and they spent probably $100 to have the print made and so it's $600.
Yeah.
But they've got probably $300 or $400 in it. So no, I think because in the very beginning everybody was saying, and we said you ought to kind of our rule of third. And here it's not a rule; it's up to you. But we say you ought to make 3 times whatever it costs you to put it together.
At least, yeah. Okay.
So, and I would say if you look at the depot, I bet you'll see a lot of those are Walmart frames. And a lot of Costco prints.
That's interesting.
You know.
Okay, so then they sell the pictures, but
Right.
now how do they get hung up? I mean, that's a lot of work to hang up a gallery show.
We did it yesterday in about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
So do you have
just
like a whole
volunteers? The
crew
committee
of-
does it. We always had like the same people, like Bob Brown and Marcel Samples, have always been the major hangers, and so we
Major
kinda let
hangers.
yeah, we let them take the lead, and they're on the committees and whatnot. It happened to be at the library yesterday. Neither one of them had anything entered, and they weren't coming to hang. And I said, nobody asked them to come and hang. Well, we had 2 or 3 of our members say, well, gee, I'll be glad they want us to stay around and hang. And we hung it, and they had never done it before, and it worked out great.
Worked out great.
So
That's awesome.
that's the thing about, and what makes Dippy Cig is the people. I don't know how we get the people, but you've been there. They're the friendliest people in the world. You say you need help, and 4 of them will jump on to come in and help you with anything. They'll come to your house, and they really want to help.
Yeah.
It's like yesterday, and one person who helped us yesterday said, "Is there any room on a committee? I'd like to get involved in this." And we said, "Absolutely."
Wow, that's nice.
So,
do you think that could be because we have a lot of retirees? So they have
well,
a
he's
little
not a
more
retiree
time.
even.
Wow.
He has his own business here in town. But
Well,
he
I
says,
know
"I wanna
that's
get
why
more
Marcel
active."
didn't do it, because Marcel was
Right.
busy. He was
Yeah.
really busy.
Right.
So I know that's why he didn't, because he was like, oh, I want to put some
Right.
stuff up, but I'm too busy.
Yeah, and he's
I
had a
have
couple of
Marcel's
big
work
shows
up in
himself
here.
too. He's had a couple of big shows himself.
Did you
so.
see my wall of Marcel
Yeah.
over there?
I did. He does some great work.
He does.
So,
That, to me, that's fascinating, though. I think it's
Yeah.
a good experience, too, because I know, and I think this is just another one of those service things that you do occasionally. I haven't heard you do this in a long time, but helping people with the framing and the matting and stuff.
We're going to do one of those we have a lot of new members, and we have a
to me, that
that's
was
another thing
really a good
we have
thing.
a competition workshop 2 or 3 times a year, and we take a dozen people, and it's all day. You sit there, and we go into how do you make a picture that's good in competition, and we also kind of teach them a little bit about judging, because that's a lot of it, and so we have those. Those are beginners workshops for people who want to get into competition or selling stuff, in shows, but they've never done it. And so we have those. And then we did in the past have someone where we actually hands-on help people frame stuff.
That's what I was thinking
Only one
of.
time, and then they could do it on their own.
Yeah, that's what I was remembering, because I was mad because I
And
couldn't
we need to
go.
do that
because
again.
I took classes on framing, and I don't know, it always
Yeah, we need to do it
just
again, and
something I
we've said
never
we're
really
going
did.
to, and we haven't. And probably a good time to do it's in the summer, I would think now, because otherwise you get too many people.
Yeah.
So we need to do that, but there's something going on all the time. 2 or 3 nights a week.
Now, when you first, let's back up. When you first started the club, you and Bill, what did you think it was going to be like? Were you, okay, so you're going to have a meeting. What are you going to do in the meeting?
My goal, and Bill could not believe this, my goal was to reach 300 members, because we patterned after.
No, stop. What are you going to do in the meeting? When I show up for a meeting, what happens? What's this about?
The first meeting, well, probably the first dozen meetings, just Bill and I, we didn't have a speaker at all, just Bill and I talked.
About what?
Photography. We each had a subject. Maybe I talked about composition.
So you had.
He talked about something else, and
like
people asked questions.
Okay.
I don't know when we had our first speaker. That's a good question. I have no idea.
But that was basically the gist of it, was to teach.
I think we had our first speaker was probably Jeff Billieu, and he showed something on Photoshop, because Bill was not a Photoshop guy. Bill didn't do Photoshop, and I still don't do Photoshop. And I think Jeff Billieu offered to do some Photoshop things at a meeting, and so we kind of started there. And I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at the schedule.
But that was the whole purpose, was to have talks on photography.
Education
on photography. That was what
yeah,
your
we have
vision
a,
was when you started.
We have a, whatever you call that, a goal for the organization.
Mission statement.
A mission statement, exactly. Thank you. And the mission statement was education and photography.
Okay.
That's it.
So that's.
And I think we've stuck with that. I think everything was.
Oh, I think so too. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And the one thing I'd like to point out, primarily to you and a lot of other businesses out there, Dippy Cig does not hold any classes. We have user groups and we have workshops, but we don't teach. You go to a workshop, Photoshop, and I've never been to the Photoshop one, so maybe I should talk about one I've been to, but people talk about, like I've been to the Lightroom one, and we have a moderator, but people in the audience bring up, well, how do you do this? And then somebody else tells them how to do it, because the moderator may not know how to do everything. But you get a group of 15, 16, or 20 people together who are all Lightroom enthusiasts, and I've always said, somebody has the answer. We used to always have, one thing we used to have at our meetings was ask the expert. And I've never yet had a question come up, even when we only had like 20 members attend a meeting, when somebody didn't have an answer for it. And usually 2 or 3 answers, which will be different. But so we try not to compete with the businesses who do teaching. Ours is more of a ask questions, it will help you, and this and that and the other thing, but we don't have a prepared program where we teach something, other than the beginning competition. That is, we do have a program, we do follow it, but that's to get them to participate in the competitions and the art shows and things of that nature.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
All right, so what do you think the secret is to getting these and maintaining these volunteers? Now, let me just tell you, one meeting I was there, you weren't there. I mean, you're always there, you weren't there. And I think it was Bob Brown got up and he said, if somebody knows how to say no to Sonny, would you please teach me how? And
I hear that a lot.
Laughed.
I hear that a lot. I've been very successful. I said at one time, and I can't say it now, that I'd never approached anybody who said no. And that was, I'm going to say 8 years into the first of all, you never just stand up and say, would somebody like to volunteer? Because the chances are you're not going to get anybody, and if you did, it might not be the person you'd really want.
Ooh, good point.
You can't fire a volunteer.
It's hard.
No, you can't. My philosophy is you can't. Somebody comes to me and wants to volunteer, I'm going to live with him as long. Now, I'll help him, I'll do it, I'll encourage him and everything else, but you can't tell a guy you're not good. You just can't do it. He volunteered. He's putting. You know, we have some volunteers. You asked me how many hours I put in. We've got a couple of volunteers who've been 10 times more time than I do. Running a competition. Can you imagine what's involved in running? They have to get the judges. They do and we designed our own software and had it built.
There's another thing that you're doing too.
Yeah, that's right. We have 3 competitions a year, 4 competitions a year. Some of our volunteers they are dedicated, and they spend a huge amount of time. They're getting everything so prepared. I mean, they're so organized. Now I forgot where we were. Anyway.
How do you keep the
So what I do is I think about it, and I figure out, knowing the people and talking to them, who would be good at something. Okay? And I think about it a little bit, and I talk to a few other members, and then I go to them and I approach them one-on-one, face-to-face, not in front of a group.
Yeah.
And I say, we'd like to do this. Would you be interested in doing it? And up until probably 4 or 5 years ago, I never had anybody say no.
Wow.
Everybody always said, will you help us? Will you give? I said, we'll form a committee, get all the help you want. But then the real success is, and this is something I think everybody could learn from, and my old management was this: when you let somebody in charge, you leave them in charge. You don't tell them how to do it, and you don't micromanage them. Our directors direct. I have some of them come to me and say, gee, I don't know what to do about this. I say, what would you like to do? Well, I'd like to do this. Then do it. You're the director. As long as you stay within the guidelines, and
have you ever had any volunteers that you had trouble with?
Yeah, we have.
What do you do?
You talk to them, but you never fire them. You talk to them, and it works out. You'd be surprised, because they really want to do this. So if you point out to them, when you do this, isn't working. Most of them take it, oh, well, I want to do good.
Oh, okay.
And so you got to be diplomatic about it.
Right.
But the major thing is, our directors, and that's what we call them. We have coordinators and directors. I don't tell them how to do it. They figure out how they want to do it, and they run the show. And as long as they stay within the parameters of being educational and not competing with business and so on and so forth, we let them do their job. And you'd be surprised if you give people the authority. They're taking the responsibility, and if you give them the authority, you can't stop them. And that's why they're so dedicated. And they would fight you to take their job. I mean, they want to do this. It's a passion, but you got to let them do it. You can't keep telling them how to do it. You can't, and this comes back from, I was in electronic maintenance. Okay. And this is when computers first came in. I was in the steel industry, U.S. Steel. And so we were hiring electronic people. And this is when electronics was really new. They hired a bunch of college kids and this and the other thing. And you can't take somebody like that and tell them how to do their job. I'm paying you to do your job. Go and do your job. And I always told them when they came in and said, but we got a problem, we can't figure this out. I'd say, well, if I got to go out there and figure it out for you, then I don't need you. And they'd say, well, I'm going to go back out and take another look. Mm-hmm. Because that's what you're paying them for.
Yeah.
But in the end, that's what they really want, because they want to take the responsibility, but you can't stand over their shoulder. And so many people stand over their shoulder and say, no, don't do this, do it this way, do it that way. And then they don't have any personal interest in it.
I like your advice, though, about asking personally, because I think that is the thing that most clubs do wrong. They're like, we need a volunteer, we need a volunteer, and then you're never going to find anybody.
Now, in our newsletter, we say we need volunteers for these things. Once in a great while, you'll have somebody come forward, but not very often.
Most of the time, no.
Yeah.
But at least you're making people aware of the
aware
opportunities
of what
that are there.
Of what we're looking for, yeah.
All right, so you're also very active in the Florida Camera Club Council.
Yes.
FCCC, Florida Camera Club Council. And that is the statewide group, or the statewide,
statewide.
Florida Camera Club. That
it's a council of camera clubs.
A council of camera clubs. Okay, I like that.
Right.
That sounds better. So now, did you start that group?
No, and I don't want to brag, but I saved it. And I may need my notes now, but I learned about it at Damage. Bill and I went to Damage one meeting, and laying on the seats, they had a notice of a conference. I never heard of a Florida Camera Club Council. And at that time, I think we had to be, maybe we didn't. Yeah, we probably did, 2004. Yeah, we would have. So we decided we'd go up and go to the conference. Well, we learned about F3C. And so the following year, I volunteered to be the area rep. They decided they were going to have an area rep for each area. So I got involved as an area rep. And they had a conference.
You put Dippy Cig in the group, obviously, into
the club joins, right. And at the time, this was after their 2006 conference, though, because it may not have been. Anyway, they had a 2006 conference, and the group that was running it at that time was a really active group. They had 2 or 3 conferences 2 years apart. They were publishing a really glossy, high-quality quarterly magazine.
Wow.
And I got on the board because I volunteered as an area rep, And they went for a year, and nobody would do anything, and they went for another year, nobody would do anything. And in 2006, Bernie Hines came to me, and he said, we have a digital competition, but we were getting like 20 people enter, and we're going to drop it because nobody's entering.
Okay.
So he says, would Dippy Cig be willing to look at it and maybe take it over and manage it? So we met at a Cracker Barrel, and at the time, their rules for entering, and these were film guys now, their rules for entering digital competition was about 15 pages long. It was written by an attorney. You couldn't do this, and you couldn't do that, and you had to prove, you had to show how you took this picture because you're not allowed to manipulate, you know. So John Kennedy went along. I had asked John Kennedy to go along. About 4 of us went on. We met with Bernie Hines and 4 or 5 other people, and John said, I'll do it, and I'll take it over under one condition. And of course, they didn't want to do it, but Bernie saved it. Bernie said, it's not going to live unless we let them do it. And John said, I want one rule. I want to write the rules. It's going to be 1 page. That's it. At the time, you had to send in a CD. They didn't do anything online. It had to be a CD. He says, no more CDs. We're going to take them online. Oh, you can't take them online. We're going to take them online. And they charged 50 cents. They were getting 50-cent checks coming in. He said, it's going to be free. Well, this was totally... Finally, and Bernie Hines said, either we're going to get rid of it or we're going to let them do it. So we did it. And shortly after that, they didn't do anything. We didn't have any more any conferences. So they went to 2008 and never had a conference. And the organization was falling apart. So we volunteered to look at putting on a conference. And in doing that, I got a call from the then president on a Sunday afternoon. I'll never will forget it. I think it was a Sunday afternoon. And he said, we're really nervous about you holding a conference in Naples. It's too far away. Nobody's going to be there. And we think the F3C has served its purpose. Although digital competition, we're up to a couple of hundred people entering now. He says, that's about the only thing, that and the print. He says, we want to disband it.
Where were the conferences, in Orlando or?
No, they were in Sun City.
Okay, so near Tampa.
Well, it was more in the city, more in the center of the state. I think it was Sun City.
Sun City is near Tampa.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I've spoken there.
Okay.
Joe and I have spoken there several times.
Yeah, it must be because one of the outings they had was in Ybor City.
Yeah.
So
near
that would have been,
Tampa.
yeah. So.
But yeah, Naples is far down here.
Yeah, and that organization had dropped out. The guy that was the printer, he retired, so they no longer had a quarterly magazine.
Okay.
The club that had been putting on all the conferences, they didn't do it anymore. And the new club that took it over just couldn't get it together.
Yeah.
So anyway, they said they were resigning. And this was the president who called me, and he said, the board's resigning. Well, because when we had taken over the digital, I became vice president. And I said, well, wait a minute, John. I said, am I the vice president? He said, yeah. I said, I'm not resigning. I said, so the board's not resigning. He said, well, everybody else is. I said, that's, so what?
New board members.
I said, Tuesday, I'll call you with a new board. He said, really? So I got on the phone, and the Dippy Cig members, I called them up. We put together a board. I called him on Tuesday, and I said, I filled every position with somebody. And that year, we announced we were putting on a conference. We put on a conference that year at Edison. And we had 300 people there.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe it. Yeah, Clyde Butcher was there.
The big name
and they
you
couldn't
got.
put on it. And so, yeah, they literally couldn't put on a conference, and they had just lost interest. It's hard to get people in a club to, I don't know, they had other interests or something. I don't know what it was, but they just, because I used to go to their board meetings. We'd go to their board meetings, and we'd sit there and say, let's do, let's do, well, hemming and hawing, and nobody wanted to take any responsibility. And when I said, I'll do one in Naples, they said, oh, you can't do that, it's too far away.
A bunch of negative people, it sounds like.
Yeah. But it all worked out great.
Yeah.
Because now we have 60 clubs, 5,000 members, and now they're putting on a conference every year. And that's thanks to Joe Fitzpatrick, our new president, so. Who's sitting right over here.
Nobody can say no to Sonny.
Nobody can say no to Sonny.
Yeah, there's another one, yeah. But, and you pick the right people, though. See what I mean? You pick the right people to do these things. And then you let them do it.
Yeah.
Get out of the way and let them do it.
So this
Having been a president, and that's what bothered me with Joe, and I've asked Joe several times, he asked me, I want to make sure that, I'm helping Joe, because I'm the vice president, and that I don't want to ever interject my thoughts because Joe's running the club. Let him run it. And if you ask me for help, I'll do anything you want. But I don't want to tell him, anything anybody's doing, you let them do it. And that's the secret to success. I really think it is. So.
Now, this last conference, how involved, because you were very involved in the 2010, how many conferences?
We
2010,
put three. We
12?
put 3 on.
10, 12,
8,
2010?
10, and 12.
Oh, I didn't know about the 2008. I missed that one. The 10?
Oh, wait a minute. 10. It was 10, 12, and the first one at
The 12 was
we
at
did at
the
Edison,
Hilton,
and we did the Hilton, and then we did FGCU.
and that was 2015.
15, right.
Okay, so 10, 12, 15,
17.
17.
Was the last one they
and
just
then
did.
now
Now
it's
they're
going to
gonna
be
do
18. Okay. Now
And
how,
we hired a management company to do it.
this year?
And I remember sitting in the president's living room up in Florida. Betty and I used to drive up there to the meetings, and I
Up in
said, why don't we
Florida?
hire somebody?
Where's Florida?
I'm trying to think of the name of the
Oh,
town. I can't remember.
anyway, some
Anyway, it
other
doesn't
town.
matter. It
Yeah,
was their
yeah,
board
yeah.
meeting. And I said, why don't we hire somebody? They had money sitting in the bank. They had like $12,000. I said, we can hire somebody. Yeah.
$12,000. Oh,
I
from
said,
the other conferences?
yeah.
Okay.
And I said, we could hire somebody to do this. Well, I don't know that we could do it. Why can't we? I said, let me look into it. So I looked around, tried to find some people. I suggested it. Nobody was willing to do it. And that's what we're doing now.
And then when-
and that has worked out. I think Joe will even admit that has been the way to go. It really has. They manage it, they run it, and we volunteer, we help them. But
Well, they report to you.
because Dippy Cig had done it 3, and after the third time I said, that's it. We're not going to do it anymore. And everybody said, what do you mean you're not going to do it anymore? I said, no. We did it 3 times. If some of these other 50 clubs can't do it, then we're not going to do it anymore because our people are getting tired of doing it. It's no longer a thrill. It's no longer different.
Yeah.
The first couple of times, boy, it was exciting.
Yeah.
But now it was, people, I'll
now
help.
it's just a
but
bunch
yeah.
of work.
So I knew it was getting to the point where, and I've always said, and this is why I didn't like being president of the F3C, and Eric Hansen took it over from me, and I told Eric, I don't like being president of the F3C because my interest is Dippy Cig.
Okay.
And when it comes to doing something, we're going to do it at Dippy Cig. I'm not going to suggest we do it at F3C.
I see. Yeah.
Because that's my primary interest. So,
Right.
And still is.
And now Joe's the president.
And Joe's the president, right.
And so on this last conference, how involved were you?
I was on the committee. We had a small committee. I was on the committee. I think I was
Compared
involved.
to the one before?
The one before, yeah, I would say it was about the same because we
Really?
had somebody, Don Fisher ran the committee.
Oh,
before,
that's right. I forgot about Don
and
Fisher. He was amazing.
organized it. He ran it.
Oh, that guy was
He
amazing.
was absolutely amazing. He had a big committee, which really didn't need, and that's why I think Joe was smart. We're keeping a really small committee. But yeah, so it wasn't a lot of work, but I wasn't going to find another Don Fisher. I knew that.
God,
And
that's
our
incredible.
members were getting tired of doing it. So I just said, no more. That's it. Our interest is not the F3C.
Now,
So
how does Dippy Cig get their money? Because
we charge $30 a year.
that's not very much money.
More
So
than
how
enough
do you
money.
pay for the insurance and all the other stuff?
More than enough money. We have 400 members.
At $30 a year?
$30 a year.
And what about, you have a little, do you make any money off that
A
little
little
jar
bit, but
tip?
they
Not much.
don't even pay the rent.
Doesn't pay the
They pay
rent.
half the rent.
But the 30
But we do
bucks-
appreciate it.
The $30 a year is enough. Wow. Now tell me, how did you get the idea to have these special lectures?
Yeah, that's really interesting. We had done an art show down at Marco Island, and they do art. I mean, they're an art center, and they'd never done a photography show. So, happened to be the director was a member of Dippy Cig, and she came up to me one night and she said, "Would you do an art show at the Marco Island Center for the Art?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "We'll do a reception and so on and so forth." So we did, and that was about the 3rd or 4th one we'd ever done, and we sold a lot of stuff. And she came to me and she said, she'd been the director for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. She said, "That's the best success we have ever had on anything we've offered here.
Wow.
Painting, sculpture, anything." She said, "We drew more people. There was more interest." They say you can't sell photography, but you really can't. So anyway, a few months later, she contacted me and she says, "We need to do something else. I need to do something else with your club." And she said, "Would you be willing to co-sponsor and have someone come and speak on photography, okay, because she wants to encourage photography at Marco Island Center for the Arts. So I said, yeah, let me think about that. So I thought about it for a little bit, and I'm thinking, who could I get for a speaker? I had no idea. So I remember I went online, and the birding festival was going on, and I went through and I'm looking at the different
that's up in
speakers
St. Augustine.
of St. Augustine, and I'm looking at them, and I'm going to their websites and whatnot, because I don't know any speakers. And I clicked on this one guy, and he had a picture of the Naples Pier.
Ah.
So I said, whoa, he must be fairly close. So I got a hold of him, and his name was Mike Matthews.
Okay.
He lived in Estero, and I said, would you be interested? He says, I'm into macro. Could I do a macro one? Absolutely. So we put it on. Profitably, it was the most successful thing they have ever done.
Well, that was more of a workshop than
That
a
was
talk,
you
though,
paid,
right?
yeah, that was a.
Didn't he
it was a
bring
talk
all his
first.
little bugs
Yeah,
and all that,
it was
lizards
a talk
and
first
stuff?
and then a workshop.
Yeah.
And
Because I think that's a big appeal.
so that was really successful. And the agreement was, I'll furnish the speaker, she'll furnish the location and do the reception, and we'll split the profits. And Dippy Cig has never wanted to make any more money. We don't have fundraisers or anything. It's memberships, $30 a year. So we made quite a bit of money on it. And so I thought, you know, that was pretty easy to do. So I tried to find somebody else that I could sponsor with. And I even talked to Peggy Farren about doing it. Because I don't want to sell tickets. I don't want to get involved in tickets. I don't want to get involved in registering people and so on and so forth. So I pondered over this thing and couldn't find anybody who was interested in partnering with us, because I wanted to do it, 4 or 5 times a year. And so then I thought, well, why not just offer it for free? Why do I have to sell tickets? Yeah. The sponsors are paid for by Nikon, Canon, so on and so forth, although we've had some that don't have sponsors. They'll come now, and they'll cover their own costs because they want to come. I have people contacting me now and say, can I come and speak? And so it's not really that's expensive. And my goal had been to reach 300 members. Okay.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You were like, I'm going to make 300, I'm almost
right,
there.
Right, and this was 3
then,
years
boom,
ago. We
400.
were at 280, and it could never get above 280. We could never do it. And so I thought, we'll advertise and we'll use it. Well, that first year that we did it, we took in 116 new members. Okay.
That was, okay, hold on.
It was
I'm going to slow
15
you
to
down because you're kind of all over the place.
That's
So this is the lecture series.
right.
The lecture series, okay, you just talked about this and that and the other thing, but let's back up.
That's what I'm talking about.
I know,
I
but
started
let's
a lecture
back up
series.
because you said, okay, with Mike Matthews, you partnered with the Marco Island Center of the Arts, but then
Well,
you
here's what-
didn't do it like that again.
Well, we didn't do a workshop with it. See,
You
he spoke
did.
first. He
Okay.
did put a lecture on
Right.
first. I think it was a 2-hour lecture or something, and then went into a workshop. So the first person I contacted happened to be the director of Nikon's teaching and training, Mike Carrata.
So did you know Mike?
No.
So how did you come up with Mike?
Well, I found out who was in charge of Nikon training.
Okay, so you were like, okay, I want to start this lecture series.
Right.
And how
Well,
am I
start
going
off,
to find?
I sent an email that explains about Dippy Cig and how successful it is and how many members we have, and that was a big thing. We have 380 members. So I got a hold of Mike, and he said he'd be glad to come down. So Mike was our first speaker.
Yeah, and he was really good.
And he was good.
And that was in the summer, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was like August, which is our slow time.
Right.
And you still had over 100 people there.
Right.
Right. And it was free to members.
It was free to members.
So that's how you jumped
Right.
ahead to the membership.
Right. And already this year.
You got too excited.
Already this year. Now this is what? Well, back, May. I've got 63 new members this month already, this year already.
Yeah. Now,
And why? It's because of the speaker. We have people who are joining now from Miami, from Sarasota, and the only thing they want to do is they want to come to the lecture series.
so your lecture series, the first year was about 4 people. There was Mike and
5 or 6, I'm not sure.
anyway, it was every few months. You had,
Right.
and you rent the auditorium in this case.
Yeah, we have to
And
rent
you
the
have 100
auditorium.
or more
We take them out
people.
to dinner. There's some expense involved.
Because you had Rick Salmon was one of
But
your
right-
original speakers.
Right. But right away, the first time we offered it, we had like 30 or 40 people join right away. We'd never had that happen before. And I said, okay, this is what we're
This
going to
is
do.
gonna work.
And it's strictly, and we advertised it as a membership campaign. That's the only thing the lecture series is for, it's a membership campaign.
So the first year, okay, so you talked to Nikon training guy. How'd you get Rick Salmon? How'd you get, how did you get these big name guys to come here to Naples?
One of the things
Did you call Canon and say, hey,
No, you
would
don't
you
do that.
sponsor
No,
somebody to
that's
come
not the
here?
way you get a speaker.
How do you get them?
Other clubs are asking, how do you get a speaker? If you contact Canon or Nikon company, you probably never get anybody.
Okay.
You got to contact the speaker themselves. That's the secret. Even now, I contact the speakers themselves. They end up contacting
To get their own
Sony
sponsors.
or whoever it is, and they say, I want to go to Naples, and will you cover the expense? Have them go to their sponsor. And so that's the way to do it. It really
So
does
how did
work.
did you just ask people for like, who should we
I'll
contact?
tell you who was a big help, and that was, and now I'm having a mental burst from Hunts.
Oh,
Gary Farber.
Gary Farber.
Gary Farber told me about Rick Salmon.
He is a
And
great
he is a great source of right. And
He
so
was a
he
guest.
told me about
Did you
Rick
see
Salmon.
his show here?
Yeah.
He was on the show. He did a great
Yeah,
job.
and he's a sponsor. I see you have
Yeah,
his advertising, right? And we do too. He's a great supporter of Dippy Cig. Always has been.
He's a
He
great
furnishes
guy.
door prizes for our lectures and everything. So he gave me some suggestions of names, and he says, I don't think you'll get Rick Salmon. And I said, well, he gave me like 5 names, and of course I had heard of Rick Salmon, and he said, I don't think you can get him. Well, who are you going to go after? I mean, you're going to go after the biggest name, right?
Obviously.
And so I sent Rick an email, and he went back and he said, I'd be glad to come. And it happened to be in the winter, as I recall. And so he came.
Well, that's something, and I want to just talk about you. Because of you and your lecture series, there is the Understand Photography show. Because you did that the first year, you had 4 or 5 speakers.
Right.
And then the next year you said, I'm going to have a speaker every month. And I'm like, oh my God, all these big famous people are coming, photographers are coming to Naples every single month. And I, as you know, I'm a very busy person. I have, all these photographers working for me. I'm still working photographer. I got the show, I got the classes.
Right.
And I was like, I can't do a podcast. I can't do anything. I just can't do it. I can't take anything else on. But then it was like, oh, my first speaker is going to be Artie Morris. I'm like, Artie Morris?
I know.
Oh my God.
We had Artie the first year.
He was my first guest.
Right.
But anyway, in September, this past September, anyway, I agonized over it, and I thought, how can I not take advantage of these people right here in Florida, or right here in Naples,
We don't
Florida.
have them every month. In
But
fact,
you did last month, didn't you, last season?
no, I only
Well,
had-
you said you were going to.
No, well, I may have said that.
You
but,
said it, and that's what made, I agonized, and then I finally...
I'm being told over and over, and we now have a board. When Dippy Cig became an incorporation, we have a board, and we're actually being run by the board. I happen to be the president, but the president acts at the direction of the board.
Correct.
So, and I'm being told, and I was told this before we had a board, you can't have one a month or no one will be interested.
People start losing interest.
Right.
It's too much.
So I'd
Because
like
you
to have
also
6
have
or
the
8 a
regular
year,
meetings.
but I'm backing off to maybe 6. So
Yeah, I think that's wise.
in fact, I'd like to tell you who we have coming.
Okay, tell me who.
Of course, June 10th, this month, we have Maxis Gomez.
Gammas,
And this is his second time. He was one of them, and yet he was somebody who came to me and said, could I speak in Naples? And so I said, well, we'll figure out
lives
a
right in
date.
Sarasota.
And we did it in the middle of, we did it in August, last year. And
must have been
so
out
the
of
worst
town.
time, and he enjoyed it, and the people, and the club members enjoyed him more than anybody else.
He is such, you know what, he has a
It's
similar...
a one-on-one.
Well, he has a similar, I think, teaching style than Joe and I do. He just breaks it down. He breaks things down so that they're easy to understand. That's what I think of
Right.
Maxis.
So he's coming back again by popular demand.
He's
We have
coming
2 of them
June
coming
10th.
by popular demand.
Next
Yeah.
week, this week. Wait,
Next Saturday.
next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, right. So then in October, I've got Rick Salmon coming, and he wants to do a workshop. He wants to actually put on a workshop.
What's it going to be on?
Whatever they want.
Oh, but he didn't tell
Same
you.
thing with our speakers. I always let.
I know, but you don't know.
Right.
You don't know yet.
He'll tell me, and we'll advertise it. But my speakers always say, "What do you want me to speak on?" I said, "What's your favorite subject?" You can't do any better than your favorite subject,
Yeah.
right? And so they say, "It's all right if I." Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So in October we have Rick with a workshop. In November I have Ron McGill
I love Ron McGill.
from Miami Zoo, director.
Oh my God, I hope he
He's
will be on
sponsored
my
by
show.
Nikon. I approach. Tell you how it works, and I don't understand it myself. We hadn't had Nikon since the first time. Mike was my first speaker and hadn't had him since. Could not get Nikon. I'd email Mike and couldn't get anybody from Nikon. So I called Mike and I said to him, you know, we haven't had anybody in 2 years. And I started right off. We have Sony, we have Canon 2 or 3 times a year. So he says, I'll furnish you a speaker. He says, call me next week. So I did. He said, not one, I'm giving you 2. He said, I'm giving you Ron McGill and I'm coming. So we've got November, I've got Ron McGill from the Miami Zoo and a Nikon shooter. And Mike's coming, Karada is coming in December. So I got both of them. And then in January, I've got Mike Mayo. You need to go in and check his website out. He has some really unusual photography. He contacted me and wanted to know if he could come. And he doesn't have a sponsor, although he's just gone out and gotten one. But he was going to come on his own. But his photography is really unusual. And then we have Rick Salmon going to come and do a lecture in February. And then in March we have the conference, so I'm not going to do any.
So Rick Salmon's coming twice this winter? Wow.
Well, stop and think about the months he's coming too. October and February in Florida and Naples.
Well, I think
that has a lot to do with it too.
Well, you know, Bill Lee, I had him on my show. He was here because all these big famous nature photographers come to Florida in the winter.
Right.
So he was just here.
Yeah.
I went on, I saw him and I looked on his website and it's like, oh, I'll be in the Everglades. And I'm like, well, you'll be on my show while you're coming home, you know.
But that's the thing to do is to contact them direct. And I've had a couple of clubs ask me, how are you doing this? And even talking to like Mike and the people that are in charge. And if you contact the organization like Nikon or Sony or something, it just kind of falls into cracks. But if you talk to a speaker and he says, yeah, I'd love to come to Naples.
Yeah, well, they get great exposure.
And we always had 380
it's
members. That makes
here.
a difference. They want, you know.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you know, Joel heard this at the last conference. It's one of the most popular conferences is the F3C held in Naples. Well, Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
Why? It's a very affluent place. People sell more here than they do. In fact, not the last conference, but the one before, we had someone come in from the wedding show out in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And they came in, and Friday at the last conference, they sold more that Friday than they did at the whole conference in Las Vegas.
Wow.
So this is one of the reasons people, and this is why Mike, I think, he said, I'm going to give you 2 speakers.
Wow.
Because, you know.
That's awesome.
So.
All right, so to summarize, do you have any top tips for keeping a camera club going? Not running it, I mean, not starting, but keeping it going.
Give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want.
That's the secret.
And let the volunteers
it's
do
not
their
my
jobs.
club. They're not doing what I want to do. I'm giving them what they want.
Thank you, Sonny.
My pleasure. That wasn't an hour. It's hard to believe.
It went fast. So remember to check out the show notes on understandphotography.com because we're going to have a lot of links and a lot of things that we talked about here on the show. We'll put the schedule for your lecture series on it. Hopefully, the whole reason that the Understand Photography show is on Friday afternoon is because the lecture series usually on Saturday morning. So I've been lucky to get most of the people at the lecture series on the show as well.
We're trying to get them to, and I keep offering people for Wednesday night. We had one on Wednesday night. He came in from Scotland. He was here for the conference, but he was coming anyway. And we did that on a Wednesday night. And Wednesday night is very popular. So I keep offering these people Wednesday night, but so far no one's taken me up on it.
Well, it works out better for me on Saturday morning.
Okay. I'll remember that.
So next week on the Understand Photography show, my guest is going to be travel photographer Jim and I struggle with his name and I don't know why. Cernovitz. He is actually not even home yet from his travels in mid-Asia? Central Asia. Thank you. So turn in here on the Understand Photography Facebook page at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Friday, next Friday, to watch it live. Or again, remember you can watch us on YouTube or as a podcast on iTunes. Do a search under the Understand Photography show and you'll find us very easily. Thank you, Sonny Saunders, for being my guest on episode 39 I'm Peggy Farren. Thanks for watching the Understand Photography.
Get up!